Hello, friends.
Welcome to another Question and Meaning. We're Arthur and Katie, and we are here without our instruments once again. One of these days we'll pick them back up again, possibly. And so hopefully you'll join us for another hour of what we think is stimulating conversation.
Shooting the breeze.
That's what other people think,
Talk,
for sure.
talk. What are you going on about? One woman said, you just talk and you don't make a bit of sense.
Yeah, but then we also got this other call that was very nice that talked about how it was like we threw the ball back and forth to each other, and that he thought that what the world needed was more conversation, more talk, and more talk of this type, which is people really engaging ideas and engaging each other's ideas without just instantly disagreeing, without really considering it, which, I mean, a lot of our political conversation today is no conversation at all. It's just people yelling at each other. And so
I really wonder how it's going to wind up. I think we had a civil war once in this country where there were just battle lines. Sometimes they were firing at each other from a few feet away, the barricades, just shooting over the barricades into each other.
But it seems to me, I mean, I've liked ideas for a long time, and it seems to me that when you like ideas, what you like is to consider ideas. I like to consider new ideas, to think about them, to kind of roll them around in your head and play with them and see where they take you. And that means considering people's opposing points of view. And that's what we've, really wanted to be about here. And not like we're trying to convince people necessarily, but we're just trying to throw some ideas around and see what happens. And interesting things have happened for us. New ideas have happened while we've been talking on the show.
True.
It's fun. I think this is what I like to do personally.
I think that's what's wrong with conservatism. The conservatives don't want anything different. And to entertain new ideas, really, you've got to be willing to change. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're seemingly diametrically opposed to. And I think the stumbling block of the liberal mindset, yours truly included, is getting really hacked off at that and kind of hating them back.
Well, isn't
when you're on the receiving
yeah.
end of I drew a cartoon once, when we advocated for the environmental movement, they called us tree huggers. When we were pro-civil rights, they called us nigger lovers. When we were against, hey, I went to a black college. I was the first white student at an all-black college in St. Augustine, Florida in 1964. I know that word very well because I'm a lover. I'm an N-word lover. It's French Canadian. The first time I was around some people that were smoking pot, I didn't know it, but I thought, God, they're brilliantly funny. These people are just being hilarious. This French Canadian with this French accent, we called him Lucky Pierre, was waxing on about, he was riffing on this black friend who had spoken to him from across the street, and Pierre hadn't heard him. And so his black friend, he said, got really pissed up, got really angry at him, trying to watch our language. Another thoughtful viewer suggested that children are watching at this hour, after all, channel surfing. So I'll try to watch my language, which has been admittedly a bit wanting, as well as my anger, which is a lifelong problem. Anyway, so he said that he did this great imitation of a French Canadian trying to imitate a black accent, and his friend is yelling across the street at him, "Why don't you speak to me, nigger hater?" Nigger hater. It's kind of a delightful riff on the standard nigger lover, which is what anybody was called back then who had sympathies for the civil rights movement.
You've kind of gone way off what we were talking about, because I think what I was enjoying was that we were actually naturally moving into our topic of the day. So what we were talking about was ideas and the pleasure of throwing around ideas and considering new ideas, and how that is maybe one of the things of conservative mindset. A conservative hates change. I mean, that's kind of what conservative means. You want to keep things the way they are.
I believe it. That settles it.
And so you don't want new ideas. You reject anything new. You want to stay the same.
Understandable for a rich person. I'd be conservative too. I like things just fine the way they are.
What we are going to talk about today is the concept of humility. And so humility is an open-mindedness. I mean, that you could just start from there, coming from what we've been talking about, that when you're humble, you are open to new ideas. You are not so convinced that your ideas are right. And that's kind of the essence of being conservative, I would say, is that you think your ideas are right. And
right enough.
There's no reason to consider anything else because things are fine just the way they are. And I don't want to get hung up on conservative liberals. It was just that's where we were kind of where we came from. But so humility, what does it mean to be humble? And humility for me, it's been an interesting process thinking about humility in the last 10 years because I used to think humility was one of the worst things that could ever happen to you.
I'm so humble. Oh, the meek. Blessed are the meek. Oh, that's nice because they have a hell of a time.
That's right. I would confuse humility with humiliated. To me, the only way to be humble was to be humiliated. And
not bad.
That they were
close. It's close.
Yeah. Because I loved being right. I love being right. Just ask Arthur. It's my favorite.
He still likes being right.
I don't think I put the past tense on it. I think I said I love being right.
Oh, okay. I just heard the past tense.
And so to me, when you're right, that means you're smart. Because I've prided myself on being smart. I've prided myself on knowing things that other people don't know. I can remember tormenting my younger brothers and sisters coming home from school with a piece of knowledge that I'd gained because I was ahead of them in school, and they didn't know. So I would torment them with my knowledge. One of my things that I can remember the most is going, your epidermis is showing. And they was, I got to the point of tears, running to my mother saying, she says my epidermis is showing. That was, to me, that was the pleasure I took in life, was my knowledge, my superior knowledge. So that's why, for me, thinking humility of admitting that I don't know something, why I associated that with being humiliated. Because for me, when I found myself not knowing something, I always felt humiliated.
It's the social knife fight. The girls in your elementary school that were the alpha females who just tyrannized and made the other girls' life living hell. That's what I suppose the democratic system in a way, or any tribal custom, there's the alpha, there's the dominant, there's the handful that dominate the many. And they do that because they're right. There's that great quote from by Arthur C. Clarke when he said, who can forget Jacob Bronowski in his superb series, The Ascent of Man, standing amid his relatives, the ashes of his relatives at Auschwitz, and saying, this is how men behave when they believe they have absolute knowledge. Humility to me is obviously being in touch with your limitations. Period. I mean, what else is it?
I don't have any limitations. What are you talking about?
I'm a god. I'm going to be worshipped as a god. That's what this show is about. We need you people to start sending money in.
That's what we're really disappointed about, is people aren't worshiping us.
They're not worshiping us and sending cash, envelopes of cash. Don't bother putting your name on because it doesn't matter who you are. Just send the money. Keep us on the air. Help us to get this message across. Does that sound familiar?
That's right. Okay, so being humble means you are willing to admit to your limitations. So that seems like a good start. And I was thinking, so why do we want...
I wonder why humility is so rare. True humility.
Yeah, because when I was talking about what I did as a child, feeling superior in my knowledge, and that's... I think as a child, you see your ignorance as an obstacle to being an adult. The way you perceive adults is they know everything, and it's through their knowledge of everything that they have control over their lives.
Perfect word.
So we feel like when
over your life,
right,
too, yeah, not theirs.
So it's through knowledge that we have control. And so that maybe that's another thing, that by being humble, you feel like you're losing control, that you're admitting to a lack of control, and that's also terrifying. But so we think that having knowledge is and having knowledge of everything is is something to really strive for, and we're afraid of the position when we're afraid to admit that we don't know.
Because, well, again, a quote from G. Gordon Spencer, I think. G. Gordon Brown. I keep thinking of that British PM, Prime Minister this week, who said that in our system of education, we're taught to be proud of what we know and ashamed of what we don't know. And this is doubly corrupt. Mm-hmm. It absolutely blocks further knowledge, and it creates a society of phonies. Because, as we've said many times on this show, from our work, we posit that the only thing any of us, know, let's just start. K-N-O-W is a huge word. It's an absolute statement. If you say you know something, that means you know it. What do we see on Nova, on PBS last night? That there's a little over 1 million, maybe 1.8 million.
1.8 million known species on Earth. And they estimate there's at least 10 million, and that's just an estimate. It could be 100 million. They have no clue, but that it just shows how limited our knowledge of the species on Earth. And the question was, how can we, think about saving the planet and not saving the planet? That's
planet's going to take care of
hubris.
Itself. Somebody's in trouble, but it's not the planet.
How can we say we understand the ecosystem and how to keep it in balance and how to live here sustainably if we don't even know a fraction? We're at 10% or less.
Scientists said it'd be akin to a doctor trying to treat the body and only knowing 10% of the organs.
Right.
So, the point I was laboring toward, though, was what we say and have said repeatedly. It's because no is an absolute. If you know something, you know it absolutely. And we suggest the only thing we know absolutely is, something's happening at this location. If you're out there, you really think about it, you don't even know who you are. Not really know who you are. Mm-hmm. You can tell your history and all that stuff and your biology, how mommy and daddy, who loved each other very much, and, well, never mind. Let's keep it clean. And, here you are, and here's your history. And you don't know what that is. You don't know what all this stuff going on around you is. Not really know. So humility is kind of getting in touch with that. But in a society where we're taught that you're embarrassed and you have to put on a dunce cap and go sit in the corner of the classroom because you don't know the answer to the question the teacher asked you, you're punished and ridiculed and humiliated, and you have to be ashamed of your ignorance. The truth is we're all ignorant, and not only is it not anything to be ashamed of, it's something to be embraced. That's what humility is. That's what I think the real essence of Christianity actually is when it's really experientially happening, is an experience of surrender to, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I've kidded myself all my life that I'm running my life, that I know what I'm doing, that I know where I'm going, and all of a sudden one day you realize, I don't know my elbow from my other part. And you really get that, and you experience a flood of release and an incredible sense of lightness and enlightenment from the heaviness of pretense, of going through life pretending like you're a sophisticated know-it-all and you have an answer to everything and no one can defeat you. No one can make you look foolish because you know what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? I've done that. I just do that with long hair, man. I've been around. I'm hip. Done the right drugs, read the right books, drink the right beer.
Yeah, but so we all get into kind of a rut thinking that we know who we are and this is what life is.
We're hip.
And, we're whatever niche we want to be in. Some people want to be the soccer mom, not knowledge. And so without the questioning. So, I just wanted to say this because I was thinking about how in college when I was at Northwestern, I was terrified of asking questions. I never raised my hand and asked questions in class.
It's really incredibly smart.
Because
Mensa candidate.
Yeah, but I was afraid to show that I didn't know something, because I was afraid that this was, whatever the question was in my mind, I was afraid that this was something that was really obvious to everybody else. And if I asked the question, I would reveal my ignorance, and I would look like a fool. And for me, that has controlled my life so much, the fear of looking foolish.
Anybody relate to that out there? I can relate.
So I wouldn't ask the question. And then a lot of times, like half an hour later or next class, somebody would ask the same question I asked. And I think, oh, it wasn't a stupid question after all. And sometimes the professor would even say, that's a really good question. Like, wow, that could have been me. But I was so afraid of looking foolish. And then after I graduated, a couple years later, I took some classes at a state university. And just this little bit of maturity, I was less afraid to ask questions. And it was amazing, the difference. Even though it was not nearly as good a university, my willingness to admit ignorance, it meant I engaged with the professor. And there was a much better learning experience. It was amazing how much different it was. And it was all to do with my willingness to say, I don't know.
Well, look at the heat you take in elementary school. I mean, it's brutal. A schoolyard competition and ridicule and teasing for anything different. If you don't meet the societal norm, if you're not the perfect apotheosis of whatever the current tribal criteria, the apotheosis, the alpha kid, you're in for trouble. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of flack for that. I mean, I remember we were riding in the car once with my parents, and I looked out, and somebody said, "Look at the bulls in this pasture," and there were all these bulls out there, and clearly they were male. And I said, I was about 12 years old. I was a city kid. I wasn't a country kid. And I said, "Where are the mama bulls?" And my stepfather, who just delighted, he had a rich, sadistic streak. He never let me forget mama bulls.
Right.
But it was humiliating.
I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by this bit of hair.
Yeah, go ahead and wipe it away. It's my attempt to hide. I should come in a burqa. Actually, I was thinking of putting on a burqa. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, and obviously a man, I'll have a full burqa and walk around town with a sign on saying transvestite Muslims.
That would be funny.
It's kind of like puncturing the social norms, because that it all implies hipness, Don't say, hipness is, that's like you've been there, you're sophisticated, you're cool. Young kids, it's really kind of a norm, and in a way I really kind of understand it, because it's so nice to see you. What my generation does, grinning and raising your voice several octaves and putting on the act. When kids today are just kind of, they're kind of there. They don't engage in those theatrics. Mm-hmm. But it also sails a little close to the wind sometimes, I think, for implying that you're so hip, when you're still living with your parents and you haven't even got out of high school yet, but you're kind of like, Beavis and Butthead. You're sophisticated because you watched a lot of stuff on TV.
That's right. You've seen it on TV. You haven't actually lived it yourself.
That's all right. The grinding wheel of life is waiting for you whippersnappers.
Well, so we're talking about humility. And,
are we? Is that? I'm sorry. Keep me on track here.
So we've talked about it in the past. We've been working on a book called "We Are All Innocent by Reason of Insanity." We started working that years ago, then kind of put it on the shelf, and I've been working on it some this summer.
Quite a bit.
And one of the things that we got when we were working on that book was how out of touch with reality we really are. That we have all these beliefs in our minds that we configure our reality. So I have my own personal mind-generated reality that I think is really real. And I'm convinced, and that's where I'm convinced I'm right stuff comes from, because it's like I'm looking through life through my beliefs. I have belief-colored, life is belief-colored. And
cataracts is a nice analogy.
So when I believe something, then whatever I see around me, I interpret it through the lens of that belief, and I confirm my opinion. No matter what happens, I can interpret it and rationalize it in such a way as to confirm my belief. So we worked on this, and I really got convinced of it, that I interpret reality to fit my preconceptions, and that so things around me aren't the way I think they are. I'm not seeing reality accurately. I'm not perceiving reality correctly. So what this helped me do was start saying, I don't know what's true. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's right for me. I don't know, if a situation comes up and where ordinarily, like today, we were going to go record audio. And we had an idea of a place that was going to be really quiet.
Almost impossible to find.
Yes. And so it's a gravel road, very little traveled. We thought this is the perfect place. Nobody goes here. We get up there, they're paving it. I mean, not only is there
an obscure back road.
I mean, there's 3 pavers, a huge paving truck, gravel trucks going off. Or, in 10 years ago or in the past, I'd have been enraged. It was like, how dare this happen? You upset my plans. And today it was like,
Don't say you know.
Okay, don't say you know. And this is part of humility. It's like this is what I wanted to happen, but just because that's what I wanted to happen doesn't mean that's the right thing for me to be doing right now, and that it was okay. And this is so much of what's been in part of the experience, learning what humility really means, is the humility to allow things to be the way they are and not impose my idea of what should happen on it, and not get upset or angry when things don't go my way.
I'll give another example. I was a relative of mine just died, and I've got another relative who's involved in a very complicated estate hassle. And at first I was blithely throwing my opinions out there, and almost I could see the cliff edge coming where in a scenario wherein I could have gotten really blamed for just giving cavalier advice that was being acted on. I mean, he acted on the way I didn't even say for this person to act on. So I was able to talk this person back from the edge, and realized it's been going on for a couple of weeks, that, look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about probate. You need to get advice when you need to get advice. Or if you want to trust this person who's supposedly doing something, continue to trust them. But I don't know. I don't know. And that's like an old, mountain people, like wisdom is, so I hear this river floods, so you wouldn't recommend my building close to it? Wouldn't recommend it? Would not recommend it neither. Neither one. I'm just telling you what I know, that's all. Because you get blamed.
Right.
Throw your brilliant advice out there, and somebody's life gets screwed up, and it's your fault. It's not really. Unless there was a gun and a leg iron involved. But that's another kind of humility, is you don't know. It's admitting you don't know when you don't know, being in touch with your limitations.
Right, because what I noticed was that I would give advice to people, and then I would be angry at them if they didn't follow my advice. And what was happening was I was acting and I was thinking as if I know what's best for them better than they do. And because my knowledge is so unlimited that, I can arrange everyone's lives for them.
Or I'll say this, because they've used this analogy before. You may indeed. I mean, somebody could objectively, my Jewish friends are always really good at that unsolicited advice. They could nail you. It's always more comfortable to critique someone else's life than your own. But it was true. A lot of what I was told was true. So you may have an objective handle on what they're doing. You may be dead on accurate in your advice. Mm-hmm. The problem is when they don't follow it, and we get upset.
Right, we get angry.
Like putting the show on and not getting enough calls or something and getting all angry and petulant about it. Somebody doesn't do what you think they should do and you get angry about it.
Right.
Our book doesn't sell enough copies and we get angry about it. And pretty soon you're brooding and festering and...
Well, so we actually kind of talked about anger as being a topic, and we decided not to because we talked about it before. But
there's always plenty of anger on this show anyway, coming from me. This guy that very kindly called and told us about our Socratic technique here of dialogue, that he mentioned to me there is a character in the Platonic And from Plato, who was always like throwing negative energy out. And I see that a lot of playback is on the show is sometimes very painful. We didn't do it over. We want to be here, warts and all, and share. And this is who we are, man.
So, but what I was going to say was that it looks like humility and anger. It's interesting how they seem to be linked. The lack of humility resulting in anger. That maybe it's
not going my way,
right, and that's where a lot of anger comes from.
So what is that? When it's not going my way, isn't that really arrogance?
Yeah,
isn't that what that is?
Yeah, it's because it's like me saying I know what's best for other people's lives. I know what's best for the whole universe. If the world worked the way I think it should work, everything would be perfect. That's the kind of thinking.
Why am I thinking of the military? That if you bother us, we're going to annihilate you and maybe take the world with us. That's kind of an arrogant position.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a lot of anger in that. What we say, because our second book that we're working on is very much about insanity. And we define insanity as confusing mind-generated reality with actual reality. And we humbly suggest no one knows what actual reality is. No one. And so I lost it.
Well, I don't know. So how humility and insanity are linked?
Oh, thanks. Insanity is anytime I'm angry, I'm insane. Anytime I'm expressing anger with, why am I expressing it? Because the way it is isn't right. It isn't good enough. There's something wrong with it. There's something that needs changing. There's something not okay about manifest, not actual, who knows what that is, but just physical reality. Rocks are hard, water's wet. I might as well say I think water should be hard and rock should be wet. It's that crazy. It's insane. Irritation is insanity, a milder expression. Speaking of the military, violence is the ultimate expression of insanity, up to and including taking a life. Hitting out, that's insane. Killing is insaner. Mm-hmm. It's as insane as you can get. Or maybe as insane as you can get is being willing to terminate the entire human race with hydrogen bombs to preserve your political experiment, your tribe. That would be perhaps the ultimate expression of insanity, which is what we're on the verge of. Or we've been in a doomsday deadlock, a Mexican standoff for 50 years now.
Well, I was thinking there's a lot of power in humility. I talked earlier about thinking of humility as such a negative thing. And I have found that the more I admit my lack of knowledge, the more I admit the limitations of knowledge, the more open I am to other possibilities. And the more easy things seem to be. That when I say, I want it to be this way, like say, go up and film and record audio this morning, I could have just banged my head against, or I could be banging my head against the wall, like desperately to get it done. So go here and go there and go here and go there, and then end up wasting the whole day trying to get something done that just wasn't going to get done. And by opening up the possibility to being wrong, that wasn't the right thing to do, then you can just flow. It's like much more easier to flow with what's happening and not get so stuck. I just feel like when I was trying to be right all the time, I was stuck a lot. Stuck trying to have it and rigid. Those are the words that I think of when I think of being right. And when I think of humble, I think of grace and ease and flowing, and there's a power in that flexibility.
I think of as there's being in touch with reality for a change.
Right.
Humility is being in touch with your limitations, and the truth is, we think, man, are we limited? I mean, don't look now, but we are limited. I mean, we have devices that'll scramble an egg inside the shell, and we can split the atom, and we've got the clapper that turns the lights off. But we're still on the verge of self-extinction, we think. The environment, I mean, oh God, this Nova last night.
Yeah, but and that's the physical side. I could see you going that direction. How about we don't know how to love each other? Talk about limited. How
rare and fleeting is love.
Oh man,
how common is irritation and anger and boredom and jealousy and pettiness and gossip. Should I go on?
Right.
Lost.
Well, and you mentioned something about, just briefly, about humility in the spiritual, in terms of surrender.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that some more?
Well, it's the truth, isn't that what the truth is? I mean, spirituality is just another word for truth. It's what philosophy really should be about, and it's what spirituality really is about. It's not necessarily what religion is about. Organized religions, be anywhere in the world. That's kind of a presumed I know it. Again, my favorite bumper sticker, the Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it, Enough said. We're interviewing people in Atlanta once, and this woman must have been in her 80s. We're asking what the meaning of life was. She says, well, we're studying Genesis in my Sunday school, and yoicks. In any case, I'm sorry, we've said this in another show too, but a lot of you guys are probably just channel surfing, but it's like the old Zen story about the guy goes to the Zen master to get him to teach him Zen. And the Zen master said, let's have tea. Puts a cup in front of the guy and starts pouring his cup with tea. And he's talking pleasantly, and the guy is kind of starting to notice his cup is getting very full. The Zen master is just talking and smiling. And the cup gets really full, and it starts overflowing, and the guy's looking, the Zen master is still talking, pouring, and tea's running across the table down on the floor, and the guy can't stand anymore. And he finally says, stop, the cup is full. And the master says, so is your mind. Go and empty it, and then I will teach you Zen.
Yeah,
you can't learn if you think you know it all. And of course, everybody out there is thinking, I don't claim to know it all. Of course not. But watch how hard it is to change. Watch the resistance to doing something new. I'm not preaching. I feel the same thing. I'm trapped too. Mm-hmm. We're a bunch of know-it-alls, and the older you get, the less likely you're willing to wag your canine butt and get up off the comfortable mat and learn a new trick. I'm kind of mangling my metaphors.
That's right. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's it. That's right. Can't do that either.
Excuse me. Pooped a rug.
So, but as you were telling that Zen story, what it made me think of was that what some people would think was, empty my mind. So that means I become this
Mongoloid.
A Mongoloid, right. And then anybody that comes along can just fill my mind with trash. Yep. Because you have to be undiscerning. If you're ignorant, humility and ignorant, what's the difference? If you're humble and you just are willing to be open to anything, then that could be a very dangerous state.
That's right. God knows.
There's a lot of trash out there. Yeah. Like some people are saying, there's a lot of trash right here.
Poor white. So about spirituality, it's a pursuit of truth, and the truth is we're all incredibly limited.
Yeah.
The Eastern aphorism, those who know don't know, but those who don't know. They know they don't know. Get it? You know something when you know you're an ignorant to the 99th percentile. 99th, what is it, percentage point or whatever? How do you say it? 99th power?
99th power, yeah.
Yeah, mathematician. High school, barely crawl through high school.
Well, look at these two sentences. The universe began with a Big Bang. Now, is that true?
That's what our science god says.
How about, according to current scientific thinking, the universe began with a Big Bang? Now, that sentence has a lot more truth in it than the first sentence because it's building in the limitations. Anytime you build in, and that's what I'm finding more and more. If I say, I think, in my opinion, and really mean it when I say what I think should happen, or what my advice is, or the way I'm seeing something, it's so much more true. I'm so much more grounded in reality because that is so.
IMHO and mean it.
That's right.
In my humble opinion.
I can't see everything. I don't know what's really going on out there in this actual reality. I can only see what's being projected in here on my screen of awareness. So, and I know that that's not accurate representation of reality. It's distorted in all kinds of ways by my beliefs and assumptions.
By what you had for breakfast.
That's right.
By the temperature in the room.
There's so many, you go, if you are doubting this, go to Wikipedia and type in cognitive bias, and you will get this list of ways that everybody thinks, makes major thinking errors all the time. And you might not recognize all of them in yourself, but trust me, you will recognize a lot of them.
It's like seeing a person of color. If you have a racist, tiny little mote of racism in your psychological makeup, you're going to go, yeah! You're going to go into a defensive posture, no matter how subtle.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And if you're a sexist, you think you're going to just automatically reduce women in stature.
Or if you have a prejudice against handicapped. We've told this story before. Arthur was paralyzed from the neck down for a year, and he was...
one of the best years of my life. Just waited on hand and foot.
That's right. Our ideas of what's good and bad.
In perfect health, I just couldn't move. I wasn't paralyzed. I had complete feeling. I just couldn't move, called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
But anyway, the first time he left the hospital, he was still fairly paralyzed. And
I was in a wheelchair being pushed. I couldn't walk.
Right. And he was taken to a mall. Well, I meant, anyway.
You could sit up.
You could sit up. And he was taken to a mall, and so he saw firsthand the prejudice against handicapped.
Oh, God. Yeah. There were 5 of us with our pushers, 5 crips in their wheelchairs and being pushed by volunteers. Field trip to an art show at a mall in Jacksonville, Florida. Never mind, I won't get into it. It was still interesting. I've been in the hospital for months, and I was like, just the incredible variety of merchandise. Usually I hate malls, but color and anything other than a hospital, it was incredible. But Katie's right. What I noticed was there we were being pushed down the main promenade, and I could see people up ahead seeing what was coming. Oh my God, like the parade of the damned. And they would just lunge into shops and snatch their children to safety just to get away from us, cross over to the other side of the mall. Just an instant revulsion. Lawrence Durrell wrote a line from one of his in the Alexandria Quartet. Illness invites contempt. The sick man knows it.
So what's interesting to me, it sounds like we're saying here, or what's coming up, is that being honest, that humble and being honest are very linked. And I had this realization once recently that, okay, we have a word for lying. Lying. That's the active action of not being honest. But where's the word for telling the truth? That's the equivalent of lying. I couldn't think of one. Truthing. That we don't seem to have a word.
About being.
That really that communicates.
Being isn't being. If you're being there, like they said in House, if you're being there, there's nothing going on, or there's not as much going on. You're just transparent. Let's just be here for a second.
Interesting. It's weird doing it, looking into a camera lens.
Maybe this is what TV should be about. Just shut up.
Well, there is an awful lot of talking. Talk. Sorry.
So being, or just being true, just without
truthing.
Because if you're not in touch with your limitations, then what you're stuck with is your act, your personality that you built when you were a child, and you acted out with slight variations for a lifetime. And all you can do is promote this. Hi, my name's Arthur. Good to see you. How's everything going? Good? Oh, I'm so glad. I really care whether you live or die. God, I really care whether I ever see you again. A meteorite fell and destroyed your entire family? Gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. No, I'm not. I don't know you. I don't, I mean, don't say, the world, selective bias, people are dying, people are starving, Africans are being wiped out in AIDS epidemics. Who knows how many people are starving to death in North Korea under that dwarf. The unspeakable atrocities of the Islamic treatment of women in those godforsaken backwaters in that part of the world. I don't want to know about that. I can read it in the New York Times or be really turned off when they show a child with a hair lip in my face on the New York Times. I'm here to read the newspaper, not see that. It's almost like, what is it, the endorphins, to quote Postcards from the Edge, the endorphins. If it weren't for that happy juice flooding our brain, we would go mad if we had any inkling of the true suffering of humanity out there. But we maybe that's part of arrogance too. We just tune that out. Here in the United States, we're safely protected behind our curtain of hydrogen bombs and Trident submarines, and the world can just basically, well, who cares? I got mine. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Taking care of you and urine, you and yours, youans.
Well, I wanted to get back to before the being, because where I was going with the whole truthing thing and being honest, being part of humility, was it occurred to me that we're not just right about an idea or maybe something what should happen or how it should be. We're right about our judgments about other people, say. And what comes to mind is, and that's what we were talking about, prejudice, not admitting these, because in our PC era, it's not okay to admit to a prejudice. So we all have to suppress and repress the prejudices of, all of, and there was somebody in Mountain Express who was so honest that said, if you were raised in this country and you're older than a certain age, you're prejudiced. It's in there because you were so indoctrinated with that as a child.
I was the first white student at an all-black college in 1964. Look at what was happening in 1964, gang, in the South.
So how much is
I'm prejudiced. I'm racist.
Right. So
I'm a sexist. If I see a good-looking woman, you got to be careful now because the PC police are out.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
But
you have to repress
I'd look at her rear end, man.
Thoughts.
The day I don't look at a good-looking woman is the day you can call 911, or better yet, call the Undertaker. I'm out of here. You just, you have to hide it, but I still feel that way, and I don't care whether she's a PhD or a dunce. She has a beautiful backside. I'm going to look at it.
I wanted to get to what I was trying to get to
so
here
that's sexist.
What I'm trying to get to
proud of it,
here
but it's the truth.
Is that what also happens about being right
it's a limitation.
Is we make judgments of people. And, all of us are programmed to make superficial judgments and kind of locks people into a box. We do that within minutes of meeting them. And I had an experience that a long time ago that taught me what a horrible thing this is, but it doesn't stop me from doing it. And that was, I had gone on this trip when I was in college. I went to the Soviet Union, actually. And one of the people in this group seemed so, he just seemed so superficial to me, and so he was someone I never even spoke to because he was like an airhead, is the way I thought of him. He was like a preppy, kind of like a cheerleader, a male cheerleader type. That's how I would think of him. And so I was with these people for 6 weeks. I never spoke to this guy. I avoided him completely because I was better. I was right, he was wrong, enough said. The last day before he was flying off, I was staying in Europe for a while longer. I can't remember how he and I were just happened to be stuck together. I saw it that way, stuck together for a couple hours. Turns out he was a weaver And he was a really good weaver. And it was something I had just learned to weave a couple months before I'd gone on this trip. And I'd fallen in love with weaving. And here was somebody who had all this knowledge about something that I was really passionate about, something that we had a lot in common. I would have loved to have had a lot of time to talk to him and learn from him. But I had never, it was just sheer chance that I even got to see that, because I had blocked him out of my mind, because I was so sure I was right about who he was. And I was completely wrong. And it hurt me. And how many times in my life has that happened, where I have blocked the knowledge of some person out because I have judged them to be inferior in some way. And in my certainty that I know what I'm doing, and my certainty that of my knowledge, how wrong have I been about that person? And that's another way that humility is to question my presumptions about another human being, to question the certainty of my judgments about who they are and their worth as a human being. And in talking about this, remembering that, I'd like to remind myself to do that now, because I still judge people all the time, and I'm still sure I'm right all the time.
So what hope? What's the hope?
The hope?
What's the hope? Where's the hope of ever being any different? You're not getting any younger. And neither am I. I'm angry. I express mine in anger. But just the way life has not turned out the way I think it should on a regular basis. And I felt that way when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Wasn't good enough.
Well, since I said I was working on this We're All Innocent, and one of the things that, as I've been putting in some personal examples, I've gotten in touch with what an angry person I am. And I just have stuffed it down inside. And so I don't show it, because I think that I try to be a nice person. So a nice person isn't an angry person, so you have to hide it. But
I'm kind of like that. I never want to see you again. And Katie's like, don't worry, you won't.
Yeah, but she's furious
but it's
inside.
really like, don't worry, you won't.
That's right.
And sometimes when she does express anger, it's quite awesome. It's impressive.
But what I notice about myself, and what made me notice this is in some of the examples, I talk about how annoyed I was when this happened, or I was irritated by this. And it just seemed like this was a constant theme in all these different examples I was giving. And I was like, And I noticed that I go through my day and I'll be irritated. I just have like this general level of irritation.
Like a low boil in the back.
That's right. And it won't ever. And, I think about my parents. I never saw my parents raise their voice at each other. And they never did. Until
right up to the divorce.
And even during the divorce, they never yelled at each other. One day, my dad, Arthur calls it the press conference. Everybody, we got the whole family together, announced he was leaving, had his bag packed, and he was out the door a couple hours later. But I never heard them argue. So for me, that was the model.
Throwing furniture at each other and stuff could have been really kind of a little, you might have seen what was coming and then giving you terminal whiplash.
There was almost, looking back,
What?
I could see some warning, but at the time, I hadn't seen any. But for me, so it's like that's how I live. I'm Midwestern, very repressed, and so there's this low boil of, so I'm trying to be aware of that. When I'm just feeling irritation during the day, it just the little things of life. What I have to do during my day. Why are you irritated? You have a pretty amazingly free life compared to most people.
I think for me, it's always been like, if I can express anger and displeasure the way it is, maybe things will change. Maybe things will improve by doing that. Mm-hmm. His Majesty is displeased, so let us see what we can do to correct things and make things better. I've always been that way my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So at humility, what we're talking about, theoretically at least, is you're far more in touch with reality when you're humble. In terms of insanity, it's really getting that We operate from a mind-generated reality and mistake that mind-generated reality, all those value judgments and that half-knowledge we have about everything, scientists, gods included, religious people included. You don't know God from a doorknob. Give me a break. It's like an ant looking at the vehicle assembly building with a space shuttle inside the closed doors, loaded with a Hubble Space Telescope. It's like that you're looking at the outside of the building as an ant. Getting in touch with humility empowers us. Getting in touch with our insanity empowers us. And one of the lines, my favorite lines from our book is, you can't get any humbler than nuts. When you really realize that somebody who walks around really believing they know who they are, I mean knowing who they are, really believing they know where they are. Where in the universe are you? Exactly where? Knowing absolutely why they are. Well, we're studying Genesis. Knowing when they are. When relative to what? Knowing absolutely what they're doing. Well, I'm living my life. Of course, that's what I'm doing. And what's that? Ask. Or even worse, knowing where you came from and knowing where you're going. What do you call a person that really walks around acting like that? I call them crazy. And the only difference between, like Sheriff Jeff in one of my favorite Erskine Caldwell novels told his wife Cora they lived in the front of over the jailhouse. The jailhouse was in the back. She was embarrassed. He said the only difference between the ones on the inside of the jail and the ones on the outside are the ones on the inside have been caught. Well, the only difference between all of us walking around loose and the poor unfortunates that can't play the game, that are in the mental institutions and on medication, that we point the finger at and say, they're the crazy ones. The only difference is we can manage ours. We can suppress our craziness. We hide it under the mask of social agreement and conformity, where they can't play the game. They're incapable of holding down a regular job and paying their taxes and walking around. You know, their reality is so skewed, so redshifted, that we brand those are the crazy ones, and they have to be medicated or locked up.
So you know what about humble? Another thing that was occurring to me is that it is you can't fall. There's nowhere to fall. It's like Jesus saying, don't sit at the head of the table, sit down at the foot of the table, and be invited up. That we were talking to somebody about, he said that he thought some people are intimidated because they were afraid we might see right through them. I'll tell you what, I was afraid of when we first started this TV show, because I was afraid that viewers would see right through me, that they would look at me and say, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And
they see what they want to say.
That's one of the, when we're not humble, when we walk around in our ordinary ego state of consciousness, we have this pretense of knowledge built up and that we're afraid people are going to see through. So we're always having to put all this energy into holding it together and preventing people from seeing through us. And that's why, it's so easy to fall, you have this, erect this edifice of pretense, and then somebody shows how wrong you are. Well, that's what hurts, is this falling down to the ground. Well, when you're humble, you're down on the ground. There isn't any place to go. There isn't anything to see through. You're not trying to hold something together. So there's this safety and there's this peace because you're not putting all this energy into hiding the fact that you really don't know.
Day after day, alone on a hill, the man with the foolish grin is keeping perfectly still. And nobody seems to notice. They can see that he's just a fool. And I can't remember it. But that's it.
They don't like it.
G. Spencer Brown, that's the same quote about teaching us to be proud of what we know and ashamed of what we don't. He says the preeminent symbol of wisdom in the world has always been the fool.
That's right.
One who knows he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. Or one who's in touch with how little he knows. And that's what gurus are. Mm-hmm. They're in touch with their limitations, and they're enlightened of the pretense of having to go through life promoting your talents and showing how smart you are and how in control you are and how you know what you're doing and you're an expert, and hiding the abyss of ignorance that all of us, me eminently included.
When you were saying that, I had the impression of the emperor has no clothes. Yeah. That once that's like Jesus saying, "Become as a little child," because a child. I mean, yes, the children want to learn, but children are also often more willing to say they don't know and ask questions. And
that's right.
And that was a child that said, that broke through and said,
"He's naked, Mommy."
That's right. Everybody was afraid in that story. That's what that story's all about, is people afraid to not be part of the knowing, not part of the group, the in-group that all believe the same thing.
Now, why am I thinking about Tom when Lady Godiva was riding down the street? Tom looked. Tom peeked. Maybe he was kind of in touch with his limitation, with the origin of peeping Tom, by the way. Tom took a good look. I did not know that. Yeah, that's right.
How interesting. Yeah. Because everyone was supposed to avert their
Everybody
eyes.
was supposed to be above it. But Tom was in touch with his limitations. And he took a good long look. I was always intrigued by that story as a child. Can't think why.
All right. Well, so we're coming up on the end of our hour. So hopefully there's been one or two people out there
who are still awake.
And I've actually followed the thread of this conversation through
Humility is the golden key.
Yes.
I think that we've said that in the past. The golden key. And it could save humankind.
But the key to what?
The key to survival. For starters, how's that? I mean, one of the surprising conclusions we came to in our first book, The Game of God, Recovering Your True Identity, check it out at gameofgod.com, is that love, like Katie's spin on what she thought humility meant, it was just a loathsome, weak, wormy dish rag state.
Yeah.
That love, which we define as the experience of unconditional acceptance of what is. Catch-22 to unconditionally accept, you could unconditionally know what is. But there's a way to start. That, rats, please. Help me with that. That I was right there.
I know you were.
I had a roll go on there.
Sometimes you do that. You go into these definitions and you keep getting too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The golden key.
Oh yeah, I asked you what the key. What?
The key to survival.
Key to what?
Thank you. Love is the optimum form of survival when you are accurately perceiving and accepting objective reality that's already manifest, it's already the way it is. My complaining and whining about it is absolutely insane. It's already this way. I'm saying, I don't like the color of this orange. I think it should be purple. Is that crazy? That loving it, that accepting it is maximally empowered when you're caught in a run out at the beach. If you see the dynamics at play, you can swim sideways and get out of the thing, or you can fight it and you can drown. It empowers you. It opens you to possibilities, as Katie said. You see options that you couldn't see when you were complaining about everything. It gives you peace. It gives you acceptance. Is that enough?
Well, that's why
For starters,
humility is the golden key to solving our problems, both personal and global. So that sounds pretty good.
Personally, collectively, socially, and globally.
So let's try practicing humility.
So get humble or perish. God will punish you for not being humble. For starters, stop pretending like you know who I am.
So if you see us on the street and we don't look humble, just come up and whisper humble in our ears and help us remember.
That's right. Thanks, folks. Tune in next time.